Hare Krishna. So, good evening, everybody. I welcome you all to the second chapter, second session of Bhagavad Gita. So, to all the new participants, I welcome you. And we will begin our session with the recitation of prayers called Mangalacharan. So, these prayers will be displayed to you on the screen. You can repeat and pray along with me. And I request that all of you be in the mute mode to avoid any disturbance. So we will start right away with, yeah. Okay, fine. So we will start straight away with the prayers, the Mangalacharan. I hope everybody can see it on the screen. These are the prayers that are offered to the Guru and to the Supreme Lord Himself to open our eyes to receive the knowledge that has been given to us. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमां विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे बृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So I'm very happy to see you all today attending enthusiastically the Gita course. So it's a beautiful journey, and I'm sure those who are attending regularly are already finding the difference in your own life and perceptions. So last week we were discussing about this. We started the second chapter. Anybody remembers what is the acronym for this second chapter?
Gita.
Gita. G stands for
Guru.
Guru. Exactly. I stands for
Identity.
wonderful. Excellent. T stands for
Two
Two
duty.
duties.
the two duties. Right. And A stands for
Atmarama.
Atmarama. Great, great. That's so if you just know these acronyms, you actually know the framework of the entire Gita, I mean, entire second chapter. That's how, if you simply remember the 18 acronyms of the 18th chapter, you actually, within your mind, you can recollect what this whole Gita is about. So that's the beauty. That's simplifying the whole Bhagavad Gita into the acronyms. This has been done by great teachers. So last week we have seen what is the importance of a guru in one's life. Yeah, why one should approach a guru or a spiritual master. So we have seen the turning point in Gita came like initially in first chapter, Arjuna declined to fight because of various reasons. And in the second chapter, at a point, Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. Karpanya doshopahata svabhava pruschami tvam dharma sammuda cheta yashreyasya nishchitam bruhitan me sishyasteham sadhimam tvam prapannam. Arjuna surrenders to Krishna and says sishyasteham sadhiman. That means I have become your disciple. See, until then, Krishna and Arjuna were friends. So now Arjuna approached Krishna in the mood of a disciple and told Krishna, with my own intelligence, I am unable to solve the perplexity I have fallen into. Kindly solve my problems and tell me what is my duty and what is of real good. Yes, Shreyasya, Nishchitam Bruhitan me. Tell me for sure what is good, what is real good for me. So saying this, Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. So after having taken the position of the Guru, in the last verse, we have seen how until then Krishna was smiling. But when he started assuming the position of Guru, he has become grave because the responsibility of Guru is that of something that is really grave. That because the gravity is because he takes a responsibility to free one from the bondage of ignorance. So now the actual Bhagavad Gita starts because now Krishna starts speaking and actually instructing Arjuna. And today we are going to speak about I for identity. So if you all have seen the picture that I have sent you today, real identity. So what was it? The girl is looking at herself in the mirror. So similarly, we all see ourselves every day in the mirror, right? The most attractive person is oneself. Sometimes, in high-rise buildings, if people have to wait in the lift for long, one of the ways to keep them patient is arrange for mirrors inside because they can spend time looking at themselves and thereby not complain of the long way up. So we all love to see ourselves in the mirror and we spend a lot of time dressing what we see in the mirror, try to beautify, add a lot of glamour, touch ups, and preserve and maintain a lot of things. So the truth is it what we really are, the person that we see in the mirror? So the reality is that that's not our true identity. So what is our true identity? Today we are going to see. So today is a very interesting session. I'm going to also tell you about a real life story that happened about 50 years ago in West Bengal. So stay tuned. So right now Krishna is speaking. He begins to instruct Arjuna. So I will recite the 11th verse. Today verses from 11 to 30. So we have 20 verses to cover today. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ashocyan Anvashocastvam Prajnavadamscha Bhashase Gatasu Nagatasumscha Nanushocanti Panditaha. So one of you please repeat.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha Ashochan Anvashochatvam Pragyavadancha Bhashase Gatasuna Gatasuncha Na Anushoshanti Panditaha.
Yes. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, while speaking learned words, you're mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. So when Arjuna approached for counsel and he requested Krishna to become his guru, so Krishna starts off by chastising Arjuna. Yeah, so he's saying, Ashocyan Anvachochastvam. That is, you're lamenting for something that is not worthy of lamentation. So what was Arjuna lamenting for? He was lamenting because he has to, lamenting means he's very pained. He's lamenting because he has to kill Bhishma and Drona. Bhishma is his own grandfather and Drona is his own teacher. In fact, Arjuna was the dearest disciple of Drona. And now they're standing on the opposing side, and Arjuna is here on this side, who has to fight and actually kill them. And so that's what he was bewildered. He said, I cannot kill, they are my elders. And not just them, they're all kinsmen, my family members. So I cannot kill them. So Krishna chastised Arjuna by saying that you're lamenting for something that is not worthy of lamentation. So why was it not worthy of lamentation? Because he was lamenting that he has to kill their body. So Krishna is preparing the ground. So he's saying, but that is not what they really are. By killing their body, you're not actually killing them in person. So this is real knowledge. Till now, Arjuna tried to defend himself. Express his pain and agony for not fighting the war by putting forth some injunctions from the Dharma Shastras. What is dharma? What is adharma? That is, killing your own family people can be adharma, adharmic. But Krishna is telling about the science of the soul, which is beyond dharma, artha, kama. It's a spiritual science. So this is real knowledge. What is real knowledge? Real knowledge is MSC. What is MSC? Knowing what is matter, knowing what is spirit, and knowing who is the controller of both. MSC. What is matter? What is spirit? And who's controlling both? So I will tell you what matter is. So matter is gross, that which we see. This body that we are seeing is composed of 5 basic elements, the Panchabhutas, which we say. Yeah, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the 5 elements. And all these constitute this body. They're just made of these 5. And this is called matter. So even this is gross matter. And beyond the gross matter is the subtler matter. What is the subtle matter? It's the mind. So higher than the body is the mind. So that is also matter, but it is subtle. That means you cannot see it. And higher than the mind is the intelligence. But this is also matter. In the next, I think 4th chapter, Krishna tells about this. Indriyanir paranyahur indriyo ebhyo param mana. Manasastu parabhutir yo buddhe parasastu saha. Higher than the gross material senses is the mind. Higher than the mind is the intelligence. And higher than intelligence is the self, that is Atma. So what we're seeing in the mirror is this gross material body. And beyond the material body is the mind, which we cannot see, but it exists. So seeing is not always believing. Because you cannot see the mind, but can you deny that it does not exist? Can you deny its existence? No. So beyond the mind is the intelligence. Yeah, so intelligence has a function of discerning. It discriminates what is good, what is bad. And mind has a function of thinking, feeling, and willing. So, and this body is composed of the Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas, the knowledge acquiring senses, and Karmendriyas is the working senses. So all these compose of the gross and subtle body, which are both matter. But beyond this is something called the spirit. So the spirit is the soul, the Atma, the Jivatma. And this is highest and far superior to this matter. So one should know this discrimination. One should understand, this is called Sankhya. Yeah. Generally, we try to study scientifically what we can observe with our eyes. But that's not all that exists. There exists something that is beyond what our eyes can see and perceive. For example, the mind and intelligence. The whole psychology is all about the mind. Right? And of course, intelligence. Can any of us deny that intelligence does not exist? Only few are such intelligent girls placed in such wonderful institutions. You cannot see intelligence, but can you deny its existence? No, it's there. So seeing is not always believing. That is why we have to take the shelter of the Vedas, which talk about wisdom that is apaurusheya, beyond any contamination. It gives us pure knowledge. So Vedas are saying that the highest being is the spirit, that is Atma. So the real knowledge is to understand and discriminate what is matter, what is spirit, and who is controlling these both. So that is the subject matter of the Gita. So we will read further about the science of the soul. Text 12. Natvevaham jatunasham natvam neme janadhipaha na chaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayamatah param. Guess one of you.
न त्वेवाहं जातुनासं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपाः न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयं मतः परम्.
Wonderful. Translation. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So this is mind-boggling science. So never was there a time I did not exist. Krishna is telling this. Nor you, and nor all these kings who are in front of you. Never was there a time they did not exist. So what does this mean? For example, let's say, can one of you tell me what's your year of birth? Let's say, Madhumita, you're there?
Yes, ma'am. 2002.
2002. Okay, so 2002, Madhumita is born. She's come into being. But the fact is, Madhumita was also existing in 2000. She was also existing in 1990. She was also existing in the 18th century, 17th century. She was always existing. Maybe not by the name Madhumita, not the same body, but she has always been existing. She has come into being, through this body in the year 2002. So is it with all of us. We all have a DOB, date of birth, where we all have come into being through a material body. But that does not mean that we did not exist before that. We had always been existing, and we continue to exist. Like, for example, sometimes our grandfather or grandparents or near and dear ones, they pass away. They leave this body and they go away. So it does not mean they have ceased to exist. They have reached a different destination. They are in a different body. They continue to exist, but their body is no more, with which we have a connection of affection. It's no longer there. And of course, it pains us when any of our near and dear ones leave this world, because we share a bonding with them. And some people have this kind of a wrong understanding that one who has a spiritual understanding, that means they are like rock-hearted. Even if somebody dies, they're not moved. No, it's not so. If you see, after hearing the whole Gita, when Abhimanyu dies, Arjuna starts crying incessantly, because Abhimanyu was so dear to Arjuna. He was especially so dear to Arjuna because he's the sister of Krishna. He was such a dear friend of Krishna, and Krishna's sister is Subhadra, and Subhadra's son is Abhimanyu. Was especially very, very dear to his heart. And he really cries so badly and that too, he was killed and murdered in such an unlawful way. In fact, it is said that in Mahabharata, when Abhimanyu was killed, the birds that were flying above on the sky, they all started screaming in agony, alas, alas, what kind of adharma this is, that such a small boy is killed. Yeah. So request you all to please mute yourself. Anusha and Ganga Mataji. Yeah. So that's how Arjuna actually cries after hearing the Bhagavad Gita. Such a just few days before. But then he gets back, he gathers himself back and he executes his duty after having expressed his pain and agony. In fact, Krishna even consoles him. So it does not mean that we know the science of soul. That means we have become so hard-hearted to the events around us, and we have become so indifferent to the emotions of our near and dear ones around us. It's not true. In fact, we become much more sensitive, but in the light of true knowledge. Actually, for a person who has truly understood the science of soul, the result is that the relationships are more realistic, more beautiful, and at an individual level, and even in the level of the world. If every person can understand this science of soul, it's very easy to foster world peace and universal brotherhood based on these principles. So yeah, so Krishna is telling that never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor any of these kings, and nor would they ever cease to exist in the future. So that is that. And one more thing is, like in our childhood, when we used to see some bhakti movies, especially when some movies where the devotee dies and he becomes a, jyoti, and he merges into the Lord. So people have a conception that what happens after death means the person merges into God. That means he has no more existence. So that is absolutely false. This is what Krishna is telling very clearly. In future also, you continue to remain an individual. You were an individual in the past, you are an individual right now, and your individuality continues to exist forever. So for a person who has truly understood the science of soul and understands that the nature of the individuality a person has, it's such a beautiful truth that each and every one of us is so unique creation of the Lord. So when a person understands this nature, they don't get into unnecessary comparisons with others, thereby, in fact, saving us of so much of emotional some turmoil one goes through because of envy, competition, and trying to prove ourselves better than somebody else, and all this. So all these are just byproducts of understanding the Atma Tattva. Okay, let's go ahead, read the text 13. Here comes. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra namuhyati.
देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहि कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तरप्राप्तिर्धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यति.
As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So these are all very important verses. You all can take time to learn them by heart. So as the embodied soul continues to pass from one body to another, for example, you look at your photo album. I think some of you on your display screens, you have the pictures of when you were a child, with your parents. When you were probably 3-year-old or 4-year-old, you look at the picture. So it's the same you, but in a totally different body. Sometimes you cannot even recognize, what's that mean? So, and now you have a particular picture of yourself. Yeah. And 10 years down the line, you look much different. And 20 years down the line, you look much, much different. That's the reason people are, they take selfies to preserve the current moment when we look good. So, Kaumaram, Yovanam, Jara. Kaumaram means youth, boyhood or young age, childhood basically. Kaumara means childhood. Yovanam means youth. Jara means old age. So dehinosmit yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara. So as the soul passes through these three phases: childhood, youth, and old age. But as the body is going through this transformation, there is something that is constant. What is that thing that is constant? And not just old age, after old age, when the body dies, this soul, it continues to exist and it passes on to another body. So what is the proof? So today there is an interesting story that I will tell you about a girl named Shukla Gupta. So we all have heard about something called reincarnations and past life. So do they really exist? Past lives and reincarnations, are they just some kind of a cooked up stories that we watch on the movies, or sometimes randomly we hear of them in a newspaper, or we come across on the net, or are they really happening? So there is this famous scientist called Ian Stevenson. He's a Canadian born psychiatrist, but he worked for the university in America, in Virginia. So he has compiled about 3,000 cases of reincarnation, where people have remembered their past lives. And he has studied 3,000 such cases. And you can search for him probably on the Google. His name is Ian Stevenson. And one such case that he has recorded is the case of Shukla Gupta. So Shukla Gupta, I'll show you the picture. So can you see on the screen? Yeah, Shukla Gupta. She's a small child that you can see. It's a painting. Basically, the photographs, the original photographs were not revealed because the family had some issues with it. So this was back in the year 1959. So Shukla Gupta, she belonged to a small village in West Bengal, and she was the daughter of a railway worker. So when she was hardly 1.5 year old, she used to, take a small doll, or she used to make a cradle out of dupatta, and she used to, lull and saying that Meenu, Meenu, she used to lull. So that, and she always used to utter that name Meenu. So the parents thought there was nobody called Meenu. Why is she always saying the name Meenu? But they thought maybe because children, always like to play with the dolls by giving them some names and pet them and pamper them, just like how they are pampered by their parents. So they didn't take it seriously. But when years rolled by, within 2-3 years, when she was about 4.5 and 5 years, she started telling that I actually come from a place called Rattala, and it's a place in Bhatpara. And they were like, and she said that my husband stays there, my family stays there, and I have 2 brothers. Their name is Ketu and Karuna. Just to give all these names. And they were like wondering, why is a 5-year-old girl speaking like this? And they know of the place Bhatpara, which is like 11 miles south of the place they are staying, but they have never heard of the name Ratatala. So her father, being Mr. Sen Gupta, he being a railway employee, he kind of tried to investigate the case. He spoke to some of his co-workers, and he understood that actually the place Ratatala exists. And from one of the cousins of the co-workers, he stayed in that place called Ratatala, and he knew this person called Ketu. And in fact, he told that when he tried to probe into that whole thing, he told that he had a sister-in-law, whose name is Mana, who died back in the year 1948. So after hearing this, he was surprised and shocked. So he thought, let me further investigate into this matter. So he took his daughter along with his family. He took his daughter to this place called Bhatpara. And when they got off at this place called Rattala, she actually led the whole family to the house that where they lived, where she kind of lived in the past life. And when she took them to the house, immediately she was kind of taken aback. She was like thinking, twice. So she was a little confused. Then actually the family people came out and they told that, yes, she's confused because earlier the entrance was at that place, but after Mana, died, they closed that entrance and they put the entrance on the other side. So they led her through that entrance into that house, and about 30 people were in that house. And so this 5-year-old uh, Shukla Gupta, she sat there and they asked, so who is your husband? So among those 30 people, she pointed out and showed, this is my husband. And she even led them to her room and she showed the sewing machine. In seeing that sewing machine, she started crying, she in separation. And she even went and embraced the daughter, Meenu. Meenu is actually 12-year-old and Shukla is actually 5-year-old then. And she even told the favorite dish of her husband. And it was like a big shock to all of them. Oh, how can all this happen? So many, in a few years, the same thing continued, and she tried to express the same emotions which which Mana had in her previous body. So in this way, Ian Stevenson has collected about 3,000 solid cases which had similar stories. So, and all these cases prove one thing. He wrote as a conclusion that these stories prove that indeed there is something called reincarnation, where person carries the thoughts of previous life into the current life. So that is what nothing but tatha dehantara prapti, which Krishna is telling Arjuna, that the soul passes through childhood to youth to old age, and after the old age, the same soul passes into another body, tatha dehantara prapti. And dhiras tatra namuhyati, a person who is sober, he is not bewildered by such a change. So don't be bewildered by for killing your kinsmen, because you're not ending them. They are going to be awarded better bodies. In fact, Bhishma and Drona, they've become so old. By actually killing them, their bodies, they will be given a higher and better destination because they are very noble people. So by killing them, you're doing them good. So this is how Krishna talks to Arjuna about the signs of the soul. Text 14. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama payino nityas tam stitikshasva bharata.
Matra sparsha.
Yes.
Matra sparsha tu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agama payino anityata nityatikshvasa bharata.
O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So what Krishna is telling here to Arjuna is that you're feeling aggrieved, that's fine, but that should not stop you from performing your duty. Because grief and happiness and grief, they are the dualities of life. See, this world is full of duality. There is North Pole, there is South Pole. There is happiness, there is distress. Yeah, there is excitement and there is boredom. There is recognition, there is indifference. Yeah, there is success, there is failure. There is accomplishment and there is defeat. Yes, there are two things. That's called the duality. This world is full of dualities. There is summer, there is winter. There is heat, there is cold. So this is called dualities. So just because there are dualities and you're experiencing them, it does not mean that you should give up your duty in the face of being subject to the dualities. So that is called tolerance. Tolerance is one of the greatest virtue, no matter in which phase of life we are. For example, a student tolerates distraction, and one who can tolerate distraction succeeds in their exams, right? And the student who tolerates distractions from friends, etc., who can tolerate the distractions from bad friends and says yes to good friends, they have a golden future. They don't fall into bad association. This is called tolerance, and tolerance has to be inculcated right from childhood, because one has to have this ability to tolerate, tolerate the pullings of the mind. That's when a person can succeed and not succumb to the demands of mind. So yes, and he calls he's calling Arjuna Kaunteya, Matra Sparshastu Kaunteya, Sita Ushna. Shita means winter, Ushna means summer, Sukha Dukkhada. Sukha means happiness, Dukkha means grief. Agama Apaino, they come and they go. Anityas, it is temporary. Tams titikshasva bharata. Titikshava means be tolerant. So I've read this somewhere. How do you actually do this? How do you tolerate? So you just write it on a board, right? This too will come to pass. Yeah, this moment is not going to last. So whenever you're happy, go and look at that statement. Okay, this too will come to pass. Whenever you're sad, go and look at the statement. This too will come to pass. So if you're happy, does not mean you're always going to be happy. There is going to be some sadness around or some boredom around. And if you're down, if you're in despair, you should know that this is also not something permanent. This emotion will also come to pass. So that's not these things that are born out of sense perception. They are impermanent. They are a passing phase only. And one should learn to tolerate them. For what? For executing one's duty. And what happens when a person is steady in one's execution to one's duty? Krishna is going to tell us in the next verse. Yam hi na vyatayantyete purusham purusharshabha samadukha sukham dhiram somritatvaya kalpate.
यं हि न व्यदयन्त्येते पुरुषं पुरुषर्षभा समदुःखसुखं धीरं सोऽमृतत्वय कल्पते.
O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. So what happens when a person becomes tolerant to these dualities? In due course of time, one can qualify oneself for liberation. So that's the way, tolerance has such a deep significance in a person's advancement. You can see in our own examples, in our own college times, those who could tolerate the pushings of the senses, they could achieve something higher than those who were giving in to the demands of the senses, sense pleasures. So whenever we learn to tolerate the pushings of the mind, we achieve something higher. Similarly, if we can tolerate the dualities of life and remain steadfast in our duties, we achieve a higher destination. So text 16. Nasato vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate satah ubhayorapi drishtontastva anayostattva darshibihi. Quickly.
न सतो विद्यते भावो न भावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तस्त्वनयोस्त्वदर्शभिः.
Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. So, basically, what is coming out of ignorance? Yeah, they say na asatoma sadgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, mrityoma amritangamaya. We all have heard this popular saying. Yeah, asat, from asat one should move to sat. From tamas, from ignorance, one has to come to knowledge. What is this knowledge? This knowledge is understanding that the understanding of the nature of that which is non-existent and that which is that which is temporary and that which is permanent. So here Krishna is saying, I mean, that of the non-existent, that is for the material body, there is no endurance. That means how much ever you try to preserve this material body, especially you can see it in the heroines, they're so, I mean, it's a sad story, but it's reality. They're so attached to the kind of name and fame they gain because of the beauty. But unfortunately, that beauty is not permanent. Yeah, especially when they, cross 30s and 40s and the age starts showing the kind of mental struggle they go through. It's enormous because it's the simple reality that there is no endurance of that which is non-permanent. You cannot endure, you cannot maintain, because the body is always changing, and that's the truth, that's the fact of life. But if you're simply identifying yourself with the body, that is a cause of concern. But a person who understands the truth and reality that, see, this body is anyways going to perish, but I am not this body, I am the soul. The soul is permanent and it does not change. It is eternal. We will further read what are the qualities of the soul. They're so amazing, amazing. And that is our true identity. So the more you situate yourself in this true identity, the more one is blissful, because that is the nature of the soul. Sat, Chit and Ananda. The nature of the soul is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. So the more you identify with the true nature, the more you evolve into that being. So the more we identify with the body, the more we're subject to wavering emotions. Yes. Text 17. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinasham avyayasyasya na kaschit kartumarhati.
अविनाशी तु तत्विद्धि येन सर्वम् इदं ततं विनाशम् अव्ययस्य अस्य न कञ्चित् कर्तुम् अर्हसि.
That which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. So here, from here onwards, Krishna is telling about the details of the soul, the science of the soul, its properties, the properties of the soul. This is the knowledge which unavailable elsewhere, anywhere. Yeah. And he's saying that that which is pervading the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. And the soul is indestructible. In fact, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, it gives details about even the size of the soul. What is the size of the soul? Any amount of research scientists do, they cannot come out with the truth, but it is given in the Upanishads. Shvetashvatara Upanishad says that the size of the soul is the tip of the hair. You take the tip of the hair and you cut it into 100 parts. And each of the 100 part, you cut into more 100 parts. That each part is that size of the soul. Keshagra Shatabhagasya, there is a nice verse related to that. That's the size of the soul. And this soul is, where is it seated? That is also given in the Upanishads. It is seated in the heart. The heart is the seat of the soul. So somebody may ask, what happens when the heart is transplanted? There is a heart transplantation, right? Sometimes it happens. So what will happen to the soul? Is the soul also transplanted? No, it's just the seat is changed, but the soul is remaining. So, yeah, and where is the soul situated? It is situated in the heart region. And what is it? Where is it present? It is like it is floating in the 5 life airs: prana, samana, udana, samana. There are 5 airs, life airs, right? So with these 5 airs, it is the soul is floating in this. The Hatha Yoga system, the followers of Hatha Yoga system, their understanding is that when these airs are purified, the soul actually shows out its effulgence, its true nature. That is why sometimes when we see, very saintly people, very spiritually elevated people, they show some radiance. So why is that? They're purified of all the contaminations of matter, and the original nature of the soul is, it's that's effulgence is reflecting through them. It's radiating through them. That's how they look very radiant. So yeah, these are the details of the soul. The further details. Antavanta ime deha nityasyokta sharirinaha anashino prameyasya tasmad yudhyasva bharata. Fast, we have only 10 more minutes.
अन्तवन्त इमे देहा नित्यस्योक्ता शरीरिणः अनाशिनो प्रमेयस्य तस्माद्युध्यस्व भारत.
Yeah, so what we do now, alternatively, Jyotsna and Saumya will be reciting. Okay, so no confusion. One verse Jyotsna will recite, one verse Saumya will recite. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata. So, here Krishna is telling that material body will definitely will come to an end. How much ever you're trying to preserve it or not try to destroy it, it will eventually meet with its destruction. Yeah, the material body of but the soul is indestructible. It will continue to exist. So because of this, do not give up your duty and continue to fight. This is what Krishna is telling. So basically what happens is the soul is situated in the body, and the kind of body the soul is situated in is awarded because of a person's work. This is what exactly is called karma. Right now, the body that we have is a result of our past activities, whether it is a male body or a female body, or the body belongs to that of a beggar. Why is it that somebody has a body of a beggar in the street, and why is it that somebody has a body of Bill Gates, or why is it somebody has the body of Ambani's? Why? Is it some kind of a random event? No. It's destiny, and that destiny, who is the maker of the destiny? The individual soul. And how he's a maker? Because of the kind of work that you have done. It's simple. What I am today is because of my past activities. Even the kind of body that I have received, the kind of family I have been born in, the kind of economic status that I have, everything, it's awarded because of my past activities. Similarly, my present activities will decide what kind of body I'm going to receive later, what kind of family I'm going to be born, what kind of environment I'm going to be born in, what kind of riches I'm going to be born, everything. So this is what is called the science of work, which we will do it later. So some people say, so everything is destined, why should we work? No, we are the makers of our destiny. Because what we have done in the past, the result of that we are going through now. And what we do now, it takes its shape in the future. That is why we need to be very careful with the kind of work that we do. An intelligent person works in a way that they upgrade themselves. And this kind of work is technically called sakarma. And there is a work kind of work that will degrade the soul into lower bodies, even the body of animals, or it pushes them into hellish planets. Such kind of work is called vikarma. And there is also a special kind of work that can actually liberate you from this whole cycle of birth and death. And that work is called akarma. And these details we will see in the Karma Yoga chapter. So Krishna is just preparing Arjuna for more knowledge in the future. He's a great teacher. He's an amazing teacher. I mean, the way he's just building the whole knowledge, it's astounding. Yeah, text 19. य एनं वेत्ति हन्तारं यश्चैनं मन्यते हतम् उभौ तौ न विजानीतो नायं हन्ति न हन्यते.
य एनं वेत्ति हन्तारं यच एनं मन्यते हतम् उभौ तौ न विजानीतो न अयं हन्ति न हन्यते.
Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. So basically, Krishna is telling that, you know, a person in knowledge understands that, you know, that the self is not going to kill, or the self cannot be killed, because you cannot, the soul is indestructible in nature. You cannot kill the soul. Yeah. So Krishna further tells about, but that does not mean that, you know, people try to twist some meanings out of this. That does not mean it will that just because I cannot destroy the soul, even if I destroy the body, does not mean you're encouraging animal slaughter and some kind of a murder. In some movies, some people recite Bhagavad Gita, take some Bhagavad Gita shlokas and say that, you know, okay, now even if I murder this guy, I'm not actually murdering him. So this is not to take advantage and then qualify your own sinful deeds. Killing should be done when it is authorized, just like how can you mute yourself? Just like a person in the army, you know, if he goes and kills the opposing arm, you know, army people, he's given a gold medal for that. He's not taken into a jail because he's authorized by the government of the country. Similarly, if that very same person goes and kills some neighbor with no authority, he will be put in jail. So the activity in itself is neither good nor bad, but what has been authorized and not authorized, that is the governing laws. Yeah. Text 20. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन्नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूय अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे.
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन्नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे.
For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So here Krishna is further giving the description of the soul. Ajo nitya shashvatoyam puranyo nahanyate hanyamane sharire. So basically aja means he's unborn, nityam, Shashvatoyam, Purano, Nahanyate Hanyamane Sharire. That means even if the body is killed, the soul remains alive. So body basically undergoes 6 kinds of transformations. What are the 6 kinds of transformation that the body undergoes? It takes birth. The body takes birth. Yeah, it maintains itself. It grows. It produces some byproducts called offsprings. It dwindles and then it finally dies. These are the 6 transformations that a body undergoes. The soul does not undergo any such transformations. Ajo nityam shashvatoyam purano. Also in later verses, Krishna tells avikaro. You know, avikara means that which does not undergo any transformation. Text 21. Veda vinashinam nityam yaenam ajam avyayam katham sa purushah partha kam घातयति हन्तिकम्.
वेद अविनाशिनं नित्यं य एनम् अजम् अव्यं कथं स पुरुष पार्थ कं घातयति हन्तिकम्.
O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? So basically, Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to do his duty, just because with the knowledge that you're actually not going to kill the person by actually killing their bodies. So violence has its right application. Like for example, Manu Samhita describes that like for a person who has murdered somebody, they have to be hanged. This is a injunction given in the Manu Samhita, the capital punishment. So there is a lot of debate about whether capital punishment has to be executed or it should not be executed, etc., etc. But if a person has been proved a murderer, it is in for his own benefit that the person has to be hanged to death. If not, if the person is let free or if he's not given the capital punishment, then in the next life he has to suffer the reactions. This is the injunctions of Manu Samhita. So violence has its own application and justice has to be carried out, and it's a dharma of the Kshatriya to execute and enact these injunctions aptly. Text 22. Vashamsi जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णानि अन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि.
वासांसि जीर्णानि यदा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तदा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णा अन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि.
As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So this is the truth of the body. The body is just like a dress. We all love to buy new dresses, right? So, and wear and look at ourselves in the mirror. So taking a new body is just that. You're wearing a new cloth. And giving up our old clothes is like giving up our old body. And the soul, and there is something called the soul and the super soul. They're two different. So in a person's body is situated, like if a person's body is compared to a tree, there are two birds sitting on the tree. And these two are like two birds. And these birds are called the Jivatma and the Paramatma. So Jivatma is the soul and Paramatma is the super soul. So the super soul is the Supreme Lord himself in his Paramatma feature. And the Jivatma is a part and parcel. They're not on equal level. Jivatma is like, you can compare it to a drop in the ocean. See, a drop is same in quality as the ocean, but it is different in quantity. A drop cannot be ocean, but they're of the same quality. Qualitatively the same, but quantitatively different. You can also compare it with like fire and a spark of fire. So the Jivatma is like the spark and the Paramatma is like the big fire. So from the fire comes the spark. Similarly, from the super soul comes the soul. And they're always eternally existing separately. So text 23. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayantyapo, na shoshayati marutaha.
नैनं छिन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति पावक न च एनं क्लेद्यन्ति आपो न शोषयति मारुतः.
Excuse me. Yeah, so this is further analysis of the soul. The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Nainam chindanti shastrani. Chindanti means cutting. Shastrani, the weapons cannot cut the soul into pieces. Nainam dahati pavaka. Pavaka means fire. Dahati means burn. The fire cannot burn the soul. Na chainam kledayanti apo. Apo means water. The water cannot dissolve the soul. Na shoshayati marutaha. That means maruta means wind. The wind cannot dry the soul. These are all the properties of the soul. Text 24. Achedyoyam madahyoyam akledyo shosha evacha nityah sarvagathasthanur achaloyam sanatanaha.
अच्छेद्योऽयम् अदह्योऽयम् अक्लेद्यो शोष्य एव च नित्यः सर्वगतस्ताणुरचलोऽयं सनातनः.
This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. So these are also the further understanding about the qualities of the soul. We'll go to text 25. Avyaktoyam achintyoyam avikaryoyam uchyate tasmadevam viditvainam nanushochitum arhasi.
अव्यक्तो अयम् अचिन्त्यो अयम् अविकार्यो अयम् उच्यते तस्मादेवं विदित्वेनं न अनुशोचितुम् अर्हसि.
It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. So, this is a conclusion. After having known all this, what you should know is do not grieve for the body and go ahead and perform your duty as it is prescribed for you. So 26. अथ चैनं नित्यजातं नित्यं वा मन्यसे मृतं तथापि त्वं महाबाहो नैनं शोचितुमर्हसि.
अतच्चैनं नित्यजातं नित्यं वा मन्यसे मृतं तथापि त्वं महाबाहो नैनं शोचितुमर्हसि.
If, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. So here Krishna, being an expert teacher, he's saying that even if you don't want to believe in the science of soul, that actually a soul exists, but even then still, then that means you're just the body and it has no soul within. Even if you were to think that way, so why are you lamenting for something that will eventually be destroyed? So in either case, you should not be backing off from performing your duty. So this is called expert teaching. Yes, because there are some philosophies that exist, very wrong philosophies. Of course, also in, I think in some part of Christianity, there is a saying that animals don't have soul, so they can be killed. Because that is why they don't feel any pain, they can be killed. Some of them even went to the extent saying that women don't have soul, only men have souls. These are kind of philosophies which people concoct. And what is the origin of these philosophies? Their own mental speculation. If you ask them to show the origin of their philosophy, they have no books, no source, nothing whatsoever. It's just their mental speculation. And based on that, they create certain, wrongdoings and wrong traditions, and these traditions get carried down and drags the humanity to greater and further nations. So one has to be very careful about what is the source of one's understanding. It should have its reference in the Shastras. Text 27. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janmamritasya cha tasmadapariharyerthe natvam shochitum arhasi.
जातस्य हि ध्रुवो मृत्यु ध्रुवं जन्मामृतस्य च तस्मात् अपरिहार्य अर्थेन त्वं शोचितुम् अर्हसि.
One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. So this is a very popular, or some of you have a Telugu background, our Ghantasala. Puttina variki maranam tappadu. So marinchina variki puttu. So all of us have heard right from childhood, right? So what is the conclusion of it? If it is true that one who has taken birth is sure to die, and one who has died is sure to take birth again. So what is the conclusion after that? The conclusion is that in this unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. So actually, basically why Krishna is telling this to Arjuna is because he was caught up in the fear of his sinful reactions that he might accrue by killing his own kinsmen. But Krishna is telling, but that if you fail to discharge your duty as a Kshatriya, which is to uphold the principles of Dharma, that will actually lead to sinful reactions. So he's telling by actually not killing them, you're going to accrue sin because you're not doing your duty. Text 28. Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyakta nidhananyeva tatra ka paridevana.
अव्यक्तादीनि भूतानि व्यक्तमध्यानि भारत अव्यक्तनिधनन्येव तत्र का परिदेवना.
All created beings are unmanifested in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? So Krishna is telling that in either case, even if you were to believe that this body is body and it has no soul, that means it has just come from the five panchabhutas, and it will again mix in panchabhutas. So what need is there for you to lament? And even if you understand the reality that a soul does exist, still the soul is eternal and the body is temporary. So even in this case, there is nothing for you to lament because the soul is eternal and it cannot be destroyed. So in either case, it does not stop you from discharging your duty. So Krishna is coming back to the same point again and again. 29, last two verses. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidенam ascharyavat vadati tathaiva chanyah ascharyavat chainam anya shrunoti shrutpapyenam vedanak chaiva kaschit.
आश्चर्यवत् पश्यति कश्चिदेनम् आश्चर्यवत् वदति तथैव चान्यः आश्चर्यवत् चैनं मन्यः शृणोति श्रुत्वाप्येनं वेद चैव कश्चित्.
Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. So basically, we've been hearing so much about, probably I think as Indians, we all have this understanding what is Atma, what is body. Somewhere, somehow we've heard of it. You know, even in regular household words, we use this. Somebody's really bugging you a lot. You say, "Nakasta Atma Shanti," you know, they say that, right? So somewhere in the Indian scenario, we've been hearing about Atma. So we might be hearing about it, so we might have understood it theoretically, but then to actually put it into practice and to lead our life by this understanding is what makes the whole difference. So for example, Arjuna, he does know the science of the soul, but then Krishna is telling him as to how this understanding should deepen within you to overcome the bewilderments that you face in the process of execution of duty. And it's just not execution of duty, that we will be discussing about what is yoga, the principles of yoga, connecting to the supreme, and how one should liberate oneself through one's activities and not degrade oneself. So all that we will be seeing in the later part of the Gita. The last verse of the day. Dehi nityam avadhyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata tasmat sarvani bhutani natvam shochitum arhasi.
देहि नित्यम् अवध्योऽयं देहे सर्वस्य भारत तस्मात् सर्वाणि भूतानि न त्वं शोचितुमर्हसि.
O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being. So here, Lord Krishna is concluding about the science of the soul. He's saying, therefore, Arjuna, there is no reason for you to lament for destroying the body of the kinsman, because you're executing your duty. Yeah, and so basically, Krishna is urging Arjuna that you should not give up your duty based on misconceptions. So that's what the science of the soul, when Krishna is giving Arjuna, he's telling Arjuna to differentiate between what is matter, what is spirit. Yeah, in the process of of the understanding, how to apply it to elevate oneself, one's consciousness in a way that he sees clearly what he's actually about to do. and what is the result of such an action. Because unless one is clear of that, one cannot execute one's duty. So many a times, some people have a lot of inherent talents, but did not come out with some kind of a concrete application or upgradation, because they feel they're lacking a purpose, a direction. So that's what Krishna is giving here. That's the clarification and clarity Krishna is giving. What is exact? I mean, he's forming the platform based on which one has to build one's understanding of one's activities. This is the foundational understanding one should have. What is temporary? What is permanent? So this is the foundational principle of spiritual life, and how this further grows into the kind of duties one performs and the kind of activities one would take up, that we will see in the later sections of the Gita. So thank you very much. It's already 7:12. I will end here. Any questions, comments? Quickly, I'll take one. Remaining you can post in the group. So thank you all very much. Actually, there's one announcement that I want to make, that every Thursday we have a class from 6 to 7, and once in a week we will be having, once in a month we will be having a Zoom meeting of the subgroup that you're in. I'm sure all of you are inducted into some subgroups. I request everybody to please attend this group meeting, which will be just once a month. Like, for example, if you have not attended one of these classes, that's fine. I can send you the recording of it. But then the Zoom meeting is very important, because that's where you actually get to know each other. So our philosophy is a personal philosophy. Krishna is also a person. So if you just operate on the screen, not knowing each other, it's something very impersonal way of dealing. So yesterday I was calling different students actually from different colleges. I came across this one girl from OU. So I was just asking her, how come, like, it's nice that you have registered for the Bhagavad Gita course. So I asked her, what makes you interested? So she thought for a while, and I don't know if she's here right now. She's from OU, Osmania University. And she told that, ma'am, I like Krishna. She told so sweetly with such innocence. She said, I somehow like Krishna right from childhood. And I want to hear his message. I was like, wow. I said, I'm very happy talking to you. So it's such kind of a attachment. It comes from many births. It's a blessing it comes from a lot of lives. So that's the way. It's a very personal approach. So basically, yeah, what I want to say is, please do attend the Zoom meeting. Because these days, everything has become so impersonal, even the teaching, learning, and that. So somehow it'll be nice if we can know each other as persons. It will help me to be a better teacher, to serve you all better in your understanding of Gita. So, and you can all individually decide what will be your feasible timing. Okay. Thank you all very much. Any question?
Veena Mataji is asking you to repeat the last point about talent and purpose in the chat box.
What is the question, Sindhuja? I should repeat what?
Your point about talent and purpose.
Point about?
Last point you told about talent and purpose. You
Purpose.
said that many people want
Talent
to
and
apply.
purpose. Acha. Yeah. Talent and purpose. See, for example, there are some people probably driven by a passion to exceed in life for some reason. But there are some people, if you see, they have a lot of talent, but they're not very active. What is the reason? They have the talent, but they're not active? Because they lack a purpose. Right? And some of them actually wait to understand what is the real purpose. And it's worth waiting to, because once you know the real purpose, then you can pump so much of energy to achieve that purpose when you're convinced about that purpose. So Krishna here is giving that purpose to Arjuna. Arjuna was confused about his purpose, why he's fighting this war. He initially felt that, it was initially, if you see, he was more self-centered. He said that, I'm fighting this war. It is not going to give me any enjoyment even if I win the war. But the question is, are you fighting this war for your own enjoyment, for you to enjoy with your cousins? No. The purpose is different. He lost his purpose there. So Krishna's Gita gives him that purpose. Why you're fighting this war? So most of that time, even in our lives, we either our education or our job, sometimes even, let's say, a simple housewife, she's working so hard, and sometimes she feels that nobody even recognizes or acknowledge my work. Nobody even acknowledges what I'm my work or my service or my love. I feel sometimes, for whom am I doing all this? So we all get this doubt, right? For whom? Kiske liye? So, and for what? And actually, when a person does not get answers for these two questions now, a person cannot continue consistently in their duties. A person cannot be efficient in their duties. One should be convinced about one's purpose. And purpose also are at different levels. And Krishna in Bhagavad Gita gives those purpose, the highest purpose and the highest purpose. So that you will realize in the journey of Gita. Could I answer? Who asked this question?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Yes, Mataji.
Veena ji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Yes, Veena. Okay. Any further questions? I will answer in the group. Okay. Thank you all very much for your interest in Gita. I wish you all the best. Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranam Mataji. Thank you.
Dandavat.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Thank you,
all.
Mataji.
Thank you. Yes.
Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hari Hari. Thank you.